Well, once again, this is the last session, and for those of you that want to follow us, we welcome you to follow us on the different social media platforms. But take advantage of our website. We have lots of blogs. We have our blogs are in the top 10 of health in the USA. Podcasts, sorry, not blogs, podcasts. But we have blogs. We have all kinds of downloads to help you. We have the new app we're talking about. We've got online programs. Everything designed to help you. We really have a passion to help you renew your mind and live the life, the abundant life that God promised you. So thank you once again, all of you. And I can't resist telling you another little story about a pastor just down the road from you who was having his talk, and then he said at the end of the talk, we're going to call a meeting of the board. So he's in the back there with board members, and there's somebody else he's never seen before, a youngster, and he says, "What are you doing here?" So he said, "Well, I'm just about as bored as everybody else around here, so I hope you haven't been bored with us, so thank you."
Good evening, girls. Did you have a good restful afternoon? Stimulated your brains? Got your minds working? How's the prayerfulness going? Did you practice it? Every 10 seconds, you can see you got to talk to God literally all the time. So just think of it like that radio example as I gave you this morning, where radio takes a non-physical electromagnetic wave and it's transformed through complex electronic equipment, and out comes the sound. We've got to be like that. We've got to stay in a state of prayerfulness so that we're connected to God constantly. We're always connected, but that we're tuned in, that we don't have this fuzziness between what we should be doing and what we are doing. So we want to tune into God, be like that radio, so that the wisdom of God is pouring through you, converting through your body, and out comes this wisdom out of your mouth. And that requires a constant renewal of the mind. If your mind isn't right, nothing else will go right. Okay, you've got to learn to manage your mind. So tonight we're going to see some pictures. You've been hearing a lot of, I gave you some techniques, and I've been telling you about the mental health system, and I told you mental ill health is not on the rise. What is on the rise is the mismanagement of mental health that has actually created a whole new problem. So when we talk about people dying 15 to 25 years from mismanagement of mind, it's because the systems in place are teaching us how to mismanage our mind. So we need to go back to basics. We need to go back to spiritual basics. We need to go back to what the Word of God is teaching us, what God is teaching us, and that is renew our minds, bring every thought into captivity. I really am emphasizing it because if you realize, if people could realize, if everyone on this planet was self-regulating themselves every 10 seconds and aligning themselves with love, as Russell said, love is, and everyone says this as well, that love is the common thing that unites humanity, and it is when we operate in love, that's when transformation will happen. So if we are self-regulating every 10 seconds by talking to God, tuning into love, what world would we be living in? We would be so transformed. We would agree to disagree. We would recognize the differences because love would supersede all. You know, we love to say love conquers all, but is it really going to conquer all if we don't live a life of love? So living a life of prayerfulness is living a life of love, which is mind management, which is mental self-care, which is mental hygiene, renewing the mind, all the same stuff. Okay, so remember I said to you, mind is 99% of who you are, the non-physical spiritual, and then your physical brain and body are the 1%. So let's have a look at some nice little pretty pictures. But before we do, just a very quick reminder, each thought that we think is a veritable universe. I'm going to show you a slide in a few moments, but your thinking is phenomenally fast. As you are listening to me now, I mentioned already last night that you are thinking at speeds of 10 to the 27 in this non-conscious, non-physical, spiritual part of you. The information, as it moves through your brain, actually moves quite slowly. The information that we pick up on brain technology and so on is actually quite slow. Quantum physics is a lot faster, and your non-conscious mind operates on quantum principles. So your love, power, and sound mind is incredibly powerful. It's fast, it's beyond space and time. Okay, so what research has shown is that just one little thought in a rat brain is a veritable universe. Of a little rat thinking about getting cheese, one thought is a universe. What does that mean about humanity? What are your thoughts? If one little thought in a rat brain is a universe, what are all the thoughts that you think with your creative nature, with your Genesis nature? You are always in a Genesis moment. You are always creating matter out of mind. Right now, at this moment, at 400 billion actions per second, you are taking my words and you are building thought trees in your brain out of proteins. You are making physical matter out of your mind. And the matter that you build really does matter. So that, because those trees that you build in your brain are the roots of what you say and what you do. So whatever you're saying and doing is first a thought that you have built. That's a fundamental principle of understanding, bringing all thoughts into captivity, renewing your mind, and so on. So you build thoughts all day long. And those thoughts are the roots of your words and your actions. And how do you build thoughts? With your mind, your thinking, your feeling, and your choosing. Okay, so remember your brain and your body, I mentioned this morning, is made up of 75, last night I said this, to 100 trillion cells. So the physical 1% is 75 to 100 trillion cells. And right now, as you're listening to me, your thinking and your feeling and your choosing, which is your mind. Remember, I gave you the definition of mind last night. Your mind is your thinking, feeling, choosing, physical 99%. So right now, as you are responding to my words and the images, you are thinking, feeling, and choosing. And as you're doing that, you are influencing all 75 to 100 trillion cells of your brain and your body instantaneously. The 99% of you, this mind, spirit, soul thing that is your dominant part of you, is beyond space and time. It's not bound by space and time. Your physical brain and body are, but your spiritual nature is not. And it is your spiritual nature that's working through your brain. This is powerful stuff. You are always creating your next reality. So you are always capable of changing the reality that you've created. That is what renewing of the mind is. And I'm telling you this because we live in a world of reductionism, as I said, which kind of takes your hope away. When you're just told that you're a broken brain and that you don't have free will, it's an illusion, and that if you've got something wrong with you, well, that's it, live with it the rest of your life. That's a really depressing kind of prediction to have over your life. Meanwhile, that is not what is the truth. You know the truth. You're brilliant, and you can constantly renew your mind, constantly change. I really want you to get to grips with this concept that you are able. Neuroscience shows us that your brain is designed to respond to your mind on a conscious level every 10 seconds. That is really powerful. You are capable of connecting with the Spirit of God. You are capable of connecting with love constantly. In fact, what we see, and I'm going to show you the next slide while I explain this. Look at the next slide. What we're looking at here is a thought in action. And a thought being the result of your thinking, feeling, and choosing. So you think, feel, and choose, and you build a thought. And this thought is a veritable universe. That's one thought generating so much power, it would take thousands of years to understand what we're seeing up on the screen. And you are filled with trillions of those. Every single day you're building 30,000 to 180,000 of those thoughts. And those thoughts are creating physical matter. And that's producing your words and your actions, which is impacting your environment, your relationships, your work, and what you do with your life. So when you feel completely overwhelmed by life, remember the power that is within you. What I'm showing you on the screen is that you do not have a spirit of fear. You have a spirit of love and a spirit of power and a spirit of soundness. Okay, and it's with this love, power, and sound mind that we need to function. Now, when you look at that slide, just have a look at it again. Okay, it's behind me over here. You will see some firing. And this firing, we are measuring with various different types of brain technology. And brain technology only is able to show a very limited insight into how we function as humans. It gives us a glimpse at the 1%. It gives us a hint at the 99%. So we have to use things like quantum physics to help us to understand this incredible spiritual nature. And what we find is that quantum physics is one of the most accurate and fundamental of sciences. Fundamental means it's basic to all other knowledge. It's a really powerful way of understanding our spiritual nature. Now, you never really can understand your spiritual nature, but you can attempt to get glimpses of it. And this is what quantum physics shows us. Quantum physics is looking at a way of understanding the spiritual nature. 95% of quantum physicists believe that humans come from a supernatural source. Did you know that? 95%, because they are asking the hard questions. They are asking, who are we? What is consciousness? How do we function? What is the non-conscious? And they agree collectively that we come from a supernatural source. Well, you find that where? In your Bible. You know that as a Christian, we come from God. God is our supernatural source. So God gives us the science to confirm what we know, but it's really cool having the science, because the science is giving us these practical techniques, these reasons why we really do need to obey the word. We really do need to choose life. We also find from quantum physics that not only are we made of love, but we are immersed in love. So what does that mean? You can see physical, we can see each other. We can go inside our bodies and we can find brains and hearts and organs, and we can go inside the organs and we can find cells, and we can go inside the cells and we can find organelles, and we can go inside those and find particles, and we can go inside those and find subatomic particles, and eventually you'll get down to waves. So even though you're looking at a person, what's at my fundamental core are waves. And these are waves of energy that are life. It's this breath of life inside of me, inside of you. And these are the scientists, the quantum physicists call these core fundamental waves that we are made of energy. They call these waves of love. And they are plugged into something, and that is God. So you're literally like a cell phone plugged in. Okay? So when you don't get enough energy, you kind of wind down a little. Okay? You don't tune in properly, you don't see things with such clarity. As you renew your mind, you're renewing and reconnecting this energy inside of you that is God inside of you, the Spirit of God inside of you. So quantum physics, we talk about that Christianese, Spirit of God. Science, saying the same thing, the other side of the coin, we see that particles move like waves, and they are connected to a wave. Sir Roger Penrose is an Oxford mathematician, brilliant, in his 90s. Absolutely brilliant, and he has done research in mathematics and quantum physics showing that not only are we made of waves, and you've got yours and I've got mine, I can't have yours, you can't have mine. You make a lousy me, I make a lousy you. So we have this unique waveness inside at our fundamental core that translates back up into particles and eventually are physical. And your waves are designed to be enhanced by deep, meaningful relationships with others. So by connecting with others in love, we enhance what we're made of. So Sir Roger Penrose, he shows with his research that not only are we made of love, but we immersed in love. So right now you are sitting in love. In him we live, move, and have our being. We are immersed in God's love. We see from mathematics and quantum physics, which are really beautiful sciences, we see that all around us are waves of energy. Gravitational fields is what they also refer to as. And last year, a couple of physicists won the Nobel Prize on their work in gravitational fields, and they're starting to show how these things can be measured and how they relate to humanity. So we are literally these humans made of love, immersed in love. You are immersed in love. You are immersed in God's wisdom. All around you. Heaven is at hand. It's not something far away. It is at hand. And God is beyond space and time. So you are immersed in Godness all the time. So what you have to do is tune in to Godness, which is why we have to capture our thoughts, because our thoughts will tune us in or out of this Godness and activate this love nature that is within us and that is all around us. So when we choose, think, feel, and choose out of tune with our love nature, what will happen is that our whole body will reject this, because our brain and our body are wired based on this love design, based on this wave energy that is love. So when we operate out of love, we feel it in our body. Our body gives us alarm signals called discomfort zones to tell you, hey, wake up, you are doing something wrong, you're thinking something wrong. So we need to use these incredible brains and bodies of ours to tune in to our spiritual nature, to tune in to what God is telling us. I know that this may sound complicated, but all I'm telling you is to be led by the Spirit of God. in scientific terms. And if you don't, you're tuning out, and it's going to be like a TV or a whatever, that watching a movie, and suddenly it all just goes blurry. You can't tune it, you can't hear, you've got to tune in. And that requires a constant ongoing choice to renew. Because it's not something that you just do now and then, it's something that you do all the time. So now, just to make you even, are you excited? You're very quiet. Is this hard? Are you getting this? So there's science, not to back up Scripture. You don't have to back up Scripture. You don't have to prove God. There is science that helps us do what? Understand God. Understand the magnificence of God. We see from neuroscience and from psychoneuroimmunology and all these great fields that I've had the fortunate opportunity to study in, we see this incredible mind-brain, spirit-soul-body link. We see the magnificence of Godness. We see that all the stuff about love and about humanity and all the stuff that Jesus taught us, it's real. It's not just some story in the Bible. It is a reality. And we need to bring that reality inside. We need to not bring it inside. We need to activate that reality from inside out, not try and get it from the outside in. And that is why I say we have to be very respectful when we say scriptures. And when we pray for people, don't just throw it out there. You're talking about profound wisdom with eternity attached to it. Never use scripture as a magic potion. Be very, very deliberate and intentional about the way that you speak, about the way that you are thinking. Be self-regulated. That is what bringing every thought into captivity really means. That's a life of prayerfulness. And that is how we will move forward. And it's in those states that you will cry and freak out and fall apart and go through issues. Just last year, our son was doing a study abroad at UCLA. He studied at UCLA in California, and he was doing a study abroad in Rome. And the first night he was there, he got mugged. The whole group of students, he got separated, he got mugged, he got nearly kicked to death. And he phoned me, his phone had fallen underneath him, and he phoned me. I had just been teaching at a church, I just got in the car, and I got this FaceTime message from him, and FaceTime call, and he was sobbing. He said, "Mom, I don't know where I am, I've just been beaten up. Do you know what happened to me in that moment? I nearly died." My only reaction was, like, you freeze, you go into complete and utter stress. It was the most horrific experience. And a few seconds later, all I heard was deep breathing and running feet. And for 2 hours, we didn't know if Jeffrey was alive or dead. And for 2 hours, we lived in this zone of what has happened. Is he alive? Is he dead? Is he murdered? What has happened? And that fear that gripped me was overwhelming. But I knew that if I stepped into that zone, I would not tune into the power of God. I had to stay in this zone. No matter what happened, I had to stay in this zone. And in this zone, I cried, I screamed, I had anxiety, and I expressed it. Is my child alive? I was broken. All of us were. Mac, my kid, my other 3 girls, we were all, it was terrifying. And we comforted each other. We expressed that. We said scriptures, but we spoke the word of God in honesty. Do you know what I'm saying? We cried through that process. We freaked out in the love zone. And we had a peace and tranquility. And 2 hours later, Jeffrey managed to, long story short, but he was literally beaten to death, knocked out. As he was speaking to me, they came back, knocked him out again, took his cell phone, and he managed to, when he woke, come around, creep into a cafe, and they got him back to the school, and that's when he contacted me. But for 2 hours, we didn't know. And 3 months later, Jeffrey phoned me, continued with the program, and he was still in Paris at that stage, after Rome. And he phoned me, he said, "Mom, what's this thing called retroactive causation?" Now, my kids have grown up on these quantum concepts, so he kind of knew. So what retroactive causation is basically prayer. Okay? Basically what it is, it's a scientific way of understanding that God is not waiting for your tomorrow to help you. God has already done it all. Please hear what I'm saying. You know, we say this, but we don't understand what it means. So we need quantum physics and retroactive causation to understand what I'm about to say. So that fancy scientific word simply tells us that the future will change the past. That the future will influence the present. That the present will change the past. Because right now we're in the present, but in a few seconds' time we're in the past. That now is the past. And how we think and feel and choose is projecting into the future and reaching back into the present. I know that sounds confusing, but God is not bound by your tomorrow. Everything is done. So your spiritual nature isn't waiting for tomorrow. And God already has supplied all the wisdom in what we understand when Jesus was raised from the dead. It is done. Everything that you need, healing, everything. And we don't understand healing. It doesn't mean you may not get healed, as I said last night, and see the physical manifestation of the cancer, whatever. We don't always understand what that totally means. But healing begins with you recognizing that it has already been done. God is not waiting for tomorrow. It is already happening now. So as you pray, you're praying now. And we prayed for Jeffrey and for his protection. So what we did was we laid down the future. So when the future happened, it influenced the past. Because we prayed now for the future happened, and then it went back in time. Because there is no time. It's like confusing this, but God isn't bound by tomorrow. Tomorrow is already here. God is now-ness. So when you pray, you're praying for the past. You're praying for the future. There are studies done where people have prayed for people that have improved, but those people are actually dead. It doesn't make sense, but there's research showing that when we pray into the future, we influence the past. In other words, we are always in nowness, and we are in time. And we mustn't just stay in time. We have to realize that our spiritual nature is also this incredible oneness with God, this incredible wisdom with God. So it frees us up not to beg God, which is an insult because God has already done it. It frees us up to access the wisdom so that we can then pray, live a life of prayerfulness, because we are sowing back into the past and how the past plays out into our future, and we're sowing into the future. So when we get to the future, the past is changing the future and the future is reaching back into the past. If you understand that, God bless you. But what it means is that future, present, and past doesn't exist in the 99%. You need to sort of get this, because then you will stop begging God to solve your problems and stop thinking that they're new issues, because the solutions exist and the solutions are infinite. There isn't just one solution. You have to work out that solution. God doesn't give you a baked cake. You're going to have to work out that solution. And you have that power in you. You have the power. So when you live a life of prayerfulness, you are changing how the past is playing out into your future. You are influencing the future to change the present, which means that the future's just changed the past. Get your head around that one. You are filled with power. And part of that is accepting the good stuff with the bad stuff. If you only look for God in the good stuff, you're going to miss God everywhere. Okay? That's a big thing to get your head around. Let's look at the next slide. The next slide is a really nice, easy slide to look at. It's my scientific theory. And so basically, 400 pages later and 15 hours later, we shall be finished. So 30 seconds, look at the colors, green, purple, and blue, and pink clouds. And the reason I'm showing you this is that there's a whole bunch of science behind renewing of your mind. And that's all that this theory that I've developed does, is it shows this how thoughts build, how this mind-brain connection works, all the stuff that I've been telling you, how to bring thoughts into captivity, etc. So a very quick run through. The green part is your non-conscious mind. The purple part is your conscious mind. Your consciousness is your awareness of yourself. When you're awake, you're conscious. Your non-conscious mind, the green part, is always operating 24/7. The green and the purple part together form your spiritual nature, your 99%. And it's infinite, huge, and we use quantum physics to try to understand it. And it is your spiritual nature. It's where there's no present, past, and future. It operates at speeds beyond 400 billion actions per second. It's where your trillions upon trillions of memories are basically built and stored. Okay? You also have a physical part of you, is your brain and your body, which is the blue up there. So your brain and your body are where you house your memories. So your physical memory that looks like a tree is built into your brain, and that tree that you build in your brain, that is the memory, and you build trillions of memories. You're building up to 30,000 to 180,000 a day, okay? And those then influence every part of your body. Your body, every cell of your body embodies what you are going through in that moment as you are building the thought. So your memories are all over in your brain as a tree, and then embodied in every cell of your body. And this is why you can go through a trauma, and it can happen 10 years ago, and you can be in an environment, And let's say 10 years ago you were raped maybe, and you were very sick at the time, maybe had bad flu, and that whole terrible trauma was embodied in your brain and in your body, as well as that feeling of sickness. 10 years later, you moved on, your life has moved on, but there's a smell or a sight or a sound that triggers the trauma, and it comes back and you suddenly feel flu. You feel it's embodied. You feel that fluiness on top of all the emotional trauma. And that is that we would call post-traumatic stress disorder, but it's not a disease. It is simply a word describing what we've embodied and what we've gone through. Okay? And so it's very important when you experience those is to get them out. Remember I said last night and this morning, feeling is healing. And one of the best ways to deal with trauma is to, in a deep, meaningful relationship, to be able to talk it through. Veterans from war will tell you that the best, where their healing starts, is where they're allowed to talk about their story, where they're allowed to feel their story, where they're allowed to cry through their story, not drugged that they can't process it, not numbed or get drugs that they try and take away the memory. It's part of what you've gone through. As I've been saying all weekend, we have to process that. And as you process that, you're also processing the stuff in the mind, because you build a memory in the mind, you're building it in the brain, and then you have this impact through your entire body as well. You're very complex, and that's why life is complex. And that's why renewing of your mind is an ongoing daily process. And this is why thoughts are so important to capture, every single one, not just now and then. God doesn't tell you to just do it now and then. You're not supposed to just waffle through life reactively and not respond. You are supposed to be proactive in your life. And I know it's not always easy to do that, but you can train yourself. And when you fall, you get up. That's part of that tranquility, that awareness, that celebrating when you fall, because you know that when you pick yourself up, you can change it. When you fall, when you identify, nearly went flying there. When you identify the toxic thought, it becomes weakened. This thing becomes weakened. Look how it's shaking. When you bring it into the conscious mind, that trauma, that issue, that whatever, when you bring it into the conscious mind, it's now weakened. When it's weakened, it can be changed. If it's in the dark, it gets stronger. It's a wound that is festering. It is upsetting the love waves and every cell of your body. And eventually it's going to erupt volcanic mode somehow in your physical body and brain and in your mind. You have to deal with these. You have to get these into the Garden of Gethsemane. You have to face them, express them, freak out in the love zone, get them on the cross and raise again. Okay? And get raised again. And we are designed to do that. And that is what I've been trying to tell you all weekend. That is what my materials are filled with. This is what I've done in clinical practice for all these years and what I'm doing in research. Okay, so let's look at the next slide. I have done a lot of research, as I said, and this is one slide that kind of shows you, I just want to show you what happens when you renew your mind, when you bring all thoughts into captivity, when you deliberately and intentionally self-regulate and get in a life of prayerfulness. You will improve your cognitive, emotional, social, and intellectual functioning by 35 to 75% minimum when you are deliberate and intentional about how you run your life. When you live a life of prayerfulness every 10 seconds, which means that your thinking, feeling, choosing mind, non-physical, spiritual part of you is tuned in, is connected to God. And even when you fall, you reconnect quickly, because it doesn't mean you're not going to fall. You are. You're going to make mistakes constantly. But you get up quicker and quicker and quicker. And you recognize quicker and quicker. Okay? So what I found in training patients in clinical practice, in terms of emotions and in terms of building the brain. Because remember I said as well this morning, not only must we detox our toxic stuff, but we also have to learn new information. Every morning you are born, when you wake up, you've given birth to thousands of new baby nerve cells that are there to build into the networks of your mind, to undergird new learning. Your brain thrives on learning new information. Don't just scan an article. Take it, read it, ask, answer, and discuss. Build your memory. It's so important. I said that I'm always doing research. I spend 2 hours a day. You may say, where am I going to find the time? Well, when you're just sitting around, read. If you find something interesting to read, don't just scan through it. Really read it to learn it as though you're writing an exam on it, as though you're going to teach someone. Even if you do that for 15 minutes a day, you will transform the way your brain functions. You will use those new baby nerve cells. You see, you're being deliberate and intentional about learning. It will bring brain health. If you don't do that, if you don't learn something new every day, and I really recommend a minimum of an hour, okay, then you are going to have toxic waste in your brain, which will make you feel a sense of angst and anxiety, can lead to depression, will affect your sleep, and all kinds of other things. You need to build your brain. It's vital. You're a brilliant human being, and your brain requires growth, which means you have to deliberately learn. In my book, Think, Learn, Succeed, this is the book that's now full of water, which I just knocked over. I have the technique in the third part of this book for how to build your brain. Okay? Very simple technique. It's also going to be going into our app. At the moment, the app has the detox, how to detox your brain. Okay, so when you deliberately and intentionally, look at that graphic again, when you deliberately and intentionally do all this stuff, you are going to improve. So the first two bar graphs over there, I looked at institutions and like schools and academic environments and corporate environments and big environments, the big body, sort of institutional type places, to see that is there a constant growth happening? And is there a constant change and growth in the way people are functioning emotionally, socially, intellectually? Okay? And I found that basically it's a flat line. So there's a little bit of improvement, it goes up and it goes down, it goes up and it goes down. In other words, the first two bar graphs on the graphic there show you what will happen if you don't really deliberately and intentionally renew your mind. You're just going to stay the same. You're going to go up a little bit and down a little bit, and up a little bit and down a little bit, and this time next year you're going to be the same, and 5 conferences later you're the same. Kind of just levels off. And that is so anti what you are designed to be as a human. Renewing of the mind is constant growth. So just by applying the principles I've been teaching you this weekend to your emotional life, to your intellectual life, to your work life, to your relationships, because all this stuff applies to everything about you, you are going to go into that third graph over there. You are going to start functioning 35 to 75% more efficiently. Listen, if you improve 1%, you will be totally blown away. I'm talking about 35 to 75% minimum improvement. You won't even recognize. People will turn around and say, I'll have what you're having. Get it? Okay? If you want to know more about my scientific research, I have done a TED talk. You can pick it up. And I've got lots of scientific papers, and I'm doing, currently, if you look at the next slide, I'm currently busy with clinical trials where I mentioned this morning looking at non-pharmacological interventions for mental health. And so I work with teams of doctors, we're looking at the brain, we're looking at blood, we're looking at things like DHEA and cortisol. So what I'm doing with my research is showing the mind-brain connection and showing that graph that you just saw. I've refined my techniques. We're looking at different areas. We're looking at people's self-regulatory skills. It's very powerful. It's a hugely powerful study that I'm doing. And the point is to be able to tell you, to share with you even more evidence, like we need it, but okay, we need it. More evidence to say when you deliberately and intentionally get your mind right, and I'm testing techniques to help you to do that. When you do that, you can you can expect this 35 to 75% improvement. Anxiety and depression, as I keep saying, are not illnesses. Being overwhelmed by life is not an illness. It is the human condition. So we need to learn how to manage it. We only manage that by bringing thoughts into captivity, renewing our mind, and leading lives of prayerfulness. So essentially what I'm doing is showing that when you do renew your mind, you are going to have a massive impact on how your brain functions, how your body functions. I'm even looking at things like telomeres. Anyone here know what a telomere is? Okay, you've got DNA, you've got chromosomes, and you have little socks at the end of your chromosomes. Think of socks, that's the easiest way. Or think of a shoelace and the little plastic thing at the end of a shoelace. And what happens is that all day long your cells are dividing. There's short, medium, and long-term cell division happening and genetic expression. It's all linked together. And basically what happens is that those little shoelaces, they fray with cell division. And they've got to be reinforced, because if they don't get reinforced, if they shorten too much and start fraying, you know what it's like when you don't have that plastic thing, you can't get it in your shoe. It's quite difficult, okay? So when the telomeres start fraying, they start shortening, you will start aging. And premature aging will make you not only look haggard and feel haggard, but it makes you very vulnerable to illnesses. And it makes you very vulnerable to being mentally mind challenged, to having the mind challenges of anxiety and depression, etc., which are not illnesses, which are descriptions of, they're signals, they're emotional warning signals that something is going on in your life. So what we're seeing from the research is that when you are living under toxic stress, stress is good for you. I'm going to talk about that more tomorrow, not tonight. But basically, when you are living under the whip, when you are not connected to God, when you are freaking out about everything, when you're being reactive, when you're not building your brain, when you're not detoxing your brain, when you're just like swinging from one disaster to the next and just like catching your breath at the end of the day and then not even sleeping properly and then feeling anxious and depressed and then blaming the devil, and we just don't do that, okay? Because the devil's defeated, okay? We've got to stop and look at ourselves. We've got to take responsibility. When you're doing that kind of life, you are wrecking your telomeres. You literally are aging yourself. You are wrecking how they replicate themselves. You are messing with your DHEA and cortisol levels. You're messing with your hormones. You will put on weight. You will have hormonal issues. You are vulnerable to all kinds of other issues that can happen that are related. I don't want to go into all the medical paraphernalia and give you all the medical descriptions now, but who knows what? There's no direct pattern. I'm not going to say if you think like this, you're going to get that. No one knows that because everyone is unique. But what we do know is that illnesses are related to how you think. As you're listening to me now, you are growing branches in your brain. You are making matter out of mind. Okay, I'm going to show you some pictures of that in a moment. And these branches are like quantum neurobiological computers. And these little branches are made of proteins that are like little computers, quantum neurobiological computers. That's what you're building right now. And those little quantum neurobiological computers will influence things like telomeres and DHEA and cortisol and all these different hormones in our body. And those, what influences them? Your thought life. Your thinking influences the little computers, which then build the branches to hold your memory, which then tell your cells what to do, including your telomeres, including your endocrine system, including all the others. So if your thinking is crazy, the signal to the little computers is crazy, which means the signal to your cells is crazy, which means your telomeres shorten, which means your endocrine system goes wrong, which means your cortisol's not functioning like it should, which means your serotonin, of which 95% is in your gut, not in your brain, is now crazy. Now you're grabbing junk food and messing up your gut biome, and now you're feeling, do you see what we're doing to ourselves? We have to stop. We have to stand back. We have to be deliberate and intentional about what am I thinking about, what am I eating, what am I doing with my life, how am I reacting? I can't control the events and circumstances, but I can control my reactions. Follow this research. Take a screenshot of that. Partner with us with this research. This is amazing research, and I'm going to share all the results freely globally with the world, because this stuff is what people need to be able to help themselves. Okay? So now let's have a look at some more slides. You are not your brain. I hope I don't spoil your dinner. Okay? You are not your brain. You change that thing. You're growing it now. It looks different now than it looked 10 minutes ago. You are changing. You are in a genesis moment. As you build your brain, you change it. As you detox your brain, you change it. Building your brain and detoxing your brain and living the life of prayerfulness is changing the brain, which changes the cells of the body. And there's a feedback loop being set up between the mind and the brain, okay? And you are influencing that thing. And you are making it work for you. Your brain works for you. You don't work for your brain. Your brain is amazing, but your mind, the you-ness, your spirit, soul, body, your spirit, your you-ness, that is moving through the brain. Sure, we can have accidents and traumatic brain injuries and get chronic traumatic encephalopathy, which is damage to the head from sports, repetitive sport, concussion, etc., and that is damage to the brain. But we still have, I worked for traumatic brain injury for years, and I taught kids and adults, trained them through using these techniques that were completely illiterate. They had lost everything. They couldn't even read. They couldn't even function at the lowest levels, and they ended up getting university degrees, changing careers. And that's not something that it's not me being wonderful. I mean, we're all wonderful, but it is taking these techniques and teaching them to these people, and these people using them deliberately and intentionally. The stuff I'm teaching you, the stuff that's in my materials, this is what I taught them. This is what I show them how to do. But I can't do it for you. I can stand here and motivate you till the cows come home, but I'm not a motivational speaker. I am here to teach you about the power of your mind and that you have to take responsibility. Look at the next slide. These are actual thoughts in your brain. This is what they look like. These are the trees, okay? These are the trees. You're changing them all the time. Every node, those are your memories. You build those. The little computers that I've been talking about, they are inside those little branches. These little branches over here are called dendrites. The long things are called axons. That neurons, those are neurons. They form 20% of brain material. You've got other brain tissue as well that work with these nerve cells when it comes to memory and functioning. You control all of this with your thought life. Look at the next slide. Your thinking can change, I've just said this, so just to reinforce my point. Your thinking can change the structure of your brain, which is called mind-directed neuroplasticity, which is the sciencey word for renewing the mind. Look at the next slide. This is an amazing slide, okay, this next one that's coming up. What we're going to see here are neurons, these things, in action. So look at the movement. If you're dead, you won't see movement. That's your thinking, feeling, choosing, spiritual energy, creating that movement. As you think and feel and choose, the minute you choose, you activate genetic expression, which means you make proteins, the little neurobiological computers, and you make millions of little computers, and those computers vibrate and hold the information. You have millions upon gabillions and gazillions of these little computers in your head. You are making them right now. One of them is more intelligent than all the computers on the planet, and you have gabillions. You are functioning because you're thinking. The power of the energy coming from the throne of grace literally is flowing through you. There's these waves of energy, and as you are thinking and feeling and choosing, you are generating this pounding energy which is causing the physical creation of matter. And on those little branches are the computers that are holding my words, that are holding what you build your brain with, that are holding the traumas that you're going to reconceptualize. So when I talk about feeling is healing, when I talk about celebrating and bringing it into the light, getting into the garden, crying your way through, you are bringing the toxic elements and you are changing them. Look how those branches are growing and changing. That is what you are doing when you renew the mind. Girls, you are looking at renewing of the mind, or you are looking at staying stuck in this zone, which is renewing of your mind in the wrong direction. So you're not like in the right direction. It's growth. It's called the plastic paradox. You are always thinking, feeling, and choosing. So whether you're thinking, feeling, and choosing in the correct zone, you are going to grow, or whether it's in the toxic zone, you're still going to grow. Unfortunately, when you're in this zone, you're going to grow a bunch of those that you don't want. And that's why when you identify them, when you say, oh, I'm so depressed, and you start saying, okay, let me celebrate the fact that I'm depressed. I know that sounds insane. I'm not insane. But the fact that I can say that means that I'm celebrating the fact that the depression is a signal. Not a disease. I'm not a broken brain. Okay? It's a signal to me that something is wrong in my life. And that's when you connect with the Spirit of God and you start exploring what is the cause. Why do I feel depressed? Why? This is what I was telling you this morning, this process I put into my app. This is what you do daily, okay? And then you work on one thing over 21 days. Because one thought will have a multitude of branches. Like a tree has got branches. It's got one trunk with lots of branches. Every thought that you build has got a lot of stuff attached to it. And especially if it's over time and it's traumas, it's a really thick, big tree. So it takes a little bit of time. It doesn't just heal overnight. Okay, when you celebrate and you bring it into the light and you confess your sin, okay, or you come before God and you acknowledge the issue that you've missed the mark, or that even if you were traumatized, you didn't sin, that was involuntary, you still got to bring it out because it's still toxic. Okay? When you do that, you are weakening that little branch. You're weakening those branches. So you are celebrating the weakening. Weakening means you can change it. That's what you're celebrating, girls. And it's hard. You are going to cry. It's awful. You're going to hate it. It's nicer to maybe take something that will suppress the pain, but then it never goes away. And it's going to become something bigger. It's going to fester. A wound that is untreated is going to get bigger and bigger. Think of it like that. Okay, look at the next slide, which is also an amazing slide. Okay. There we go. Same sort of thing, different angle. Okay, so we're looking at the fact that it's pulsating. That's your spirit of life moving through you. That's your thinking, feeling, choosing, mind, spiritual 99% of you. That's that pulsing. The little blobs that you see are these little trees of which there are millions of branches. And these little trees are your thoughts. And those thoughts are controlling every cell in your body. And your thinking, feeling, and choosing is that pulsing. And that pulsing is producing material. It's producing proteins, these little computers. And it's making chemicals. So it's growing these trees with branches. And then it's also making chemicals. And those chemicals are things like neurotransmitters. And those are like the leaves on the tree. So every thought that you build has branches, which is all the information, and leaves, which is the emotions. So every thought you build has information and emotions. And that's why you feel the thought. When it comes into your mind, you feel an emotion. When you think about a loved one, you feel happy and joy. When you think about someone who's hurt you, you feel sadness. Because you're bringing up the thought with the information and the emotions, the tree with the branches and the leaves. So when you talk about bringing a thought into captivity, it's a celebration. Another one will bite the dust. If I could sing, I would sing it for you. Another one bites the dust. Okay? So you're bringing it into captivity, and that is weakening it. Now watch over there where the red writing is. You may have noticed it, some of you. Okay, so look up diagonally from the red writing. Can you see a little white blob with a few branches coming out of it? It starts shaking. It gets a little bigger. You see that? It's getting a little bigger. Watch it there closely. It's getting bigger. Why is it not doing anything? It's supposed to. Watch it closely. It's going to pop now. There, popped. Did you see that? Let's play it again. Watch diagonally from the bottom. Watch up there. Watch how it starts to shake and vibrate. And then suddenly it pops. What do you have witnessed there is something absolutely magnificent. You have watched renewing of the mind in action. You have watched a decision to bring a toxic issue into the garden, into captivity, into the light. Through your tears, you're celebrating, and you are now renewing your mind because you've brought that thought into captivity. And as you are renewing your mind, you are basically removing the energy from the toxicity, the pain, the toxic habits, the whatever it is, and you are redesigning it into a beautiful, healthy thought. And as you are doing that, the energy is removed from that to that, and therefore it pops. That is renewing of the mind. That is what you are doing with your love, power, and your sound mind. And you still remember how you were, which is what I spoke about yesterday with the kintsugi principle, where the pottery is fixed with gold. So your renewed trees that you build are beautiful because they contain all your story, but renewed, reconceptualized, redesigned. So you don't need the guilt and the shame and the condemnation that keeps you locked in. You don't need the label. It'll keep you locked in. Okay? So isn't that beautiful, that slide? Brain science is like really cool. Okay, so let's look at the next slide. This is now some drawings of the brain. So there is you hanging out of your head, what we look like in the morning. And then basically we receive information through our 5 senses and through every cell of our body. So we receive information through the words and the actions, and we smell things and we hear things, etc. But we also experience the quantum energy as well because you're immersed in love. So if you walk into a room and you feel like, something's wrong here. Who's ever felt that before? Okay? You are feeling the quantum energy. So all signals come at you from the outside in a quantum form and in an electromagnetic form. And they pass into your brain and you start thinking, feeling, and choosing. Okay, so let's look at the next slide. I'm not going to go through the parts of the brain, don't worry. There's one of these things, a neuron. And if you have a look there, it's got this long winding thing. And then at the long winding thing. Have a look at the bottom where there's lots of bubbles. That's called a synapse. A lot of you probably know that. And on the other side, you see little yellow gates. So what we have happening there is, if you look, there's a little light that seems to be moving through. Can you see it's kind of moving through? And then there's little orange things and purple things and white bubbles. This is brain science. Bubbles, pink things, white lights. Okay, so what you're seeing is all kinds of stuff. You're seeing neurotransmitters. You're seeing various different things inside the cell. What you're looking at there is the electromagnetic flow of energy that's happening in your brain at the moment. So while you're listening now, you have got a firing of electromagnetic activity, which is actually very slow, and it moves through the brain, through the different parts of the brain, through the neuron, and then it jumps across to the other side. It actually gets, the energy gets caught up in those little white bubbles, and then it moves through into the little gap there, which is called the synapse, and then it moves across through the yellow doors. And essentially what I'm telling you is that that is how information is carried in your brain. So your renewing of your mind is moving through your brain on that level, but at the same time, you have the quantum cloud. So imagine a huge big wave swooshing over what you're looking at there. That's your quantum energy. So your thinking has got this quantum big wave that envelopes all of that, and it's way faster, and then you have the slightly slower thing that travels through the brain. So why am I telling you this? Look at the next slide. Okay, all this energy that is moving, what is it? It's your mind. So your mind, and what I've just described in that detail, is how your mind translates into electromagnetic and chemical and quantum energy when you are thinking. You're doing that now. You're amazing. This is happening in your brain right now. So there we go. There's what we showed you when I started yesterday morning. There's this energy that's flying through your brain. Okay, so basically, let's look back quickly at the dendrites. I need to finish. Let's look back at the previous slide, Mac, the close-up of the dendrites. We're going to get that slide in a moment. I just quickly want to show you that those little trees that I'm talking about, the little branches, okay, it's going to come now, there we go, the dendrites. Those little branches are the things that actually hold your memories. So you are growing dendrites. These are dendrites. So when we renew our mind, we are melting off the bad ones, popping them off, and we are building healthy replacement ones. So these are the little dendrites that you grow. Now, inside the dendrites are all these quantum neurobiological computers that you are growing with your thinking. Okay? So I just want to end off with a quote. Okay, so, sorry, finding my quote here. Okay, I can't find it, I know it though. I'm going to just read it to you. There is a ton of information that I have shared with you. What I want to point out to you, and I was looking for a fancy quote, but I don't need it. I'm going to end off with something that I already memorized. I don't know where it's disappeared on the slideshow, but no problem, is that I've tried to tell you that as you are thinking, feeling, and choosing, you are creating matter in your mind. That matter then produces your words and your actions. You are able to change your next reality. And changing your next reality also means accepting what's going on in your life. And not thinking that you're bad or you don't have enough faith because you haven't received that healing, or you haven't yet got that job that's given you the money that you think you should have. It is being able to have peace in the circumstances. It is also, what I've also tried to stress with you is that this is a process. It takes time. It's not going to happen overnight. You need to daily spend time detoxing your brain. You need to deliberately and intentionally spend at least 15 minutes a day detoxing your brain. You need to spend at least an hour to 2 hours a day building your brain. Now, all the time, you've got to learn new stuff for what you do. So that's your building of your brain. Detoxing, as I said this morning, you could do while you're doing your hair. You need to start training yourself to talk to the Spirit of God all the time. That's at every 10-second thing. And I know this sounds like a lot, but this is a lifestyle change. These are the lifestyle changes that will then also influence your food decisions, will also help you to sleep more much more effectively. That when you sleep, that you get the depth of sleep that you need. And when you start putting all those together, you'll start making some decisions as well about exercise, etc. So it's a holistic thing. It's a holistic approach, but it all starts with your mind. With your mind, you decide what to eat, to exercise, how you're going to sleep. Your mind is influencing all of that. The power of the mind cannot be overlooked. You can go to as many conferences as you want. You can read as many Bibles as you want. You can read as many wonderful quotes as you want. But if you don't get your mind right, nothing else in your life will go right. I've tried to show you with these images just how incredibly brilliant you actually are and how incredibly wonderful you actually are. Our lives are shaped by a series of choices. Your mind is your thinking, your feeling, and your choosing. That's your 99% spiritual part. I've said it a million times. It is doing all these amazing things in your brain and your body. As you think, you feel. As you feel, you choose. Thinking, feeling, and choosing goes together. When you choose, you change your brain. As a man thinks in his heart, so is he. Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. That's what I've just described. Okay? So when you think and feel and choose, you change. So our lives are shaped by a series of choices. Our lives are shaped by thinking, feeling, and choosing, because you build these, and these will then produce your words and your actions. Our mistakes don't limit us. Our choices limit us. Okay, girls? So my closing statements to you tonight are two things. You cannot control the events and circumstances of your life, but you can control your choices. Our lives are shaped by a series of choices. Our mistakes don't limit us. Our choices do. Thank you so much. God bless you. I'll see you at church tomorrow.